What if your breaking point was actually a turning point? In today's episode, I sit down with Congressman Adam Smith, who's a sitting US politician, and he opens up about his battle with crippling anxiety, chronic pain, and the brutal identity loss that came with it. For the longest time, Adam looked like he had it all together, but behind the scenes, he was barely holding on. We talk about what it really feels like to lose control, why high achievers often suffer in silence, and how to start rebuilding your confidence when it feels like everything's falling apart. Adam shares the exact mindset shifts and daily actions that helped him to go from panic to purpose, and why the people around you are everything. If you've ever felt stuck, scared, or like you're pretending to be okay when you're just not, this conversation will hit home, and more importantly, it will give you a way forward. Welcome to Move Your Mind, where we uncover why you are holding yourself back from getting the life you want and what to do about it. With the help from high-achieving guests and experts in behavioural science, personal development, and the health and wellness space. Join us if you're ready to move out of your own way toward your ideal self. I'm your host, Nick Brax, and I've been working in the health and wellness space for the last 15 years, helping people find direction and gain the courage to take control of their life. My mission is simple: to help you learn everything that I wish I knew, so you can become your ideal self. Lacking guidance, I spent the majority of my youth feeling lost and disempowered, which led to depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and substance abuse. Looking back, I didn't have the vocabulary to communicate what I was experiencing. And as a man, I didn't resonate with the emotional language used in traditional therapy. I didn't need to talk about my feelings. I needed tangible solutions to guide me toward building a life I was proud of. If you can relate, then this podcast is for you. In today's episode, we discuss how to move from panic to purpose. If you're ready to take action and build a stronger mindset, then keep listening. Adam, thank you so much for making the time. Really appreciate you setting aside the time, and super excited to dive into this conversation.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the chance to be on and talk with you.
I appreciate it. And I was saying before, I guess the connection we have is, my dad was a politician in Australia, Premier of Victoria, and so, always interested in this world. It's something I've been exposed to, not directly through, my own work, but through my family. And hearing your story, it sounds really, I think it's just amazing that you've been able to stand up and, get this message out there. And not a lot of politicians, from what I've experienced, will talk about it. And it's just so important that we destigmatize it. So again, super excited to chat about this.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting when you mentioned your father being involved in politics. I've been in Congress for 27 years. My children were born when I was in Congress, and now one of them's working back in Washington, D.C., and the other one's still in college, but he's interning back here. So I kind of relate through them what it must have been like growing up in that world.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely an interesting, very unique way to grow up, and it was hard to relate to other kids. And you're growing up with having security, sometimes taking you to school, and just exposed to media and different things that it's an unusual existence, and came with positives and negatives. But it's a different world, very different way to grow up. So I guess before we get into it, would you be able to just give our listeners a bit of a background on yourself and the work you're doing, and how you came to where you are today, and with writing the book and everything else?
Yeah, sure. So I am now a member of Congress who represents the 9th District of the state of Washington, and I've had that position for 27 years. So I've been elected to 14 terms. My specialty back in Congress has been in the Department of Defense, national security issues, because I serve on the Armed Services Committee. I've been the top Democrat on the Armed Services Committee since 2011. So when the Democrats are in the majority, I've been the chair. When we're in the minority, I've been the ranking member. So I was chair for 4 years. But I really got started in SeaTac, Washington, this town I grew up in. My father was a ramp serviceman for United Airlines, baggage handler. I used to joke that I felt like there was good karma out there because I'd never lost a bag. But actually, not to dime out Australia here, but Qantas lost my bag. Eventually they found it, but anyway, it worked out. And I, as a young person, was interested in politics because of my father. He was a union rep and he was really interested in these things. He wasn't himself involved, but he wanted me to be. So I grew up in that community, and then I, went to college, got a political science degree, and I was in law school when I decided to run for local office for the state Senate. So I wound up getting elected to the state Senate when I was 25, which is a very long story in and of itself. It was a race that nobody thought I would win. But because I had my connection to the community, that was really the thing that got me there. And also I worked really hard at it. But I'd grown up with the people there, and I knocked on a lot of doors and got elected. And that's how I got into politics. And I discovered that I really like it. Basically, I like bringing people together to solve problems. I know that's not what most people think of politics as being, but that's what it's supposed to be. And so I can work with my community. If someone has a concern, I can help them. I can figure out what's a better way to help deal with the problems and challenges that people have. And then my career really worked out quite well from there. I spent 6 years in the state Senate, 4 years as chairman of the Judiciary Committee. So I got to work on a lot of issues, and then got elected to Congress in 1996, and been here ever since. Along the way, I met my wife when I was in the state Senate. We've been married for almost exactly 30 years now, coming up in 2 weeks, and have 2 children, a daughter who's going to turn 23 in a week, and my son is 20 and a junior in college. And I've lived all over the sort of South King County area: SeaTac, Tacoma, Kent, Bellevue. And so that's basically my career in a nutshell, with the one big exception of, throughout that period of time, I had on and off battles with chronic pain and anxiety that really got to the point where they were no longer controllable in 2013. I was overcome by anxiety that just wouldn't go away. And then chronic pain set in 2014. I had 3 hip surgeries. I have 2 artificial hips now. None of those surgeries went particularly well, mainly because I was missing what the real problem was. And basically, my book is about that 6-year struggle from 2013 to 2019, when I got into the mess, and then I tried to figure out how to get out of it by working through our healthcare system. So I start the book in the middle of that and then explain how I got there, and then crucially, how I found treatment. And really, that's the biggest message I want to deliver. If you have chronic pain, if you have mental health issues, help exists. It's not easy. It's not simple. It's almost never going to be the same for any 2 people, but it's there. And so I urge people to pursue that help and be open and honest about it. And that's the other big reason why I wanted to write the book. I think a lot of people get these feelings. They're like, I'm some kind of weirdo because nobody else is feeling this. I think if we're honest about what's out there, it can help people understand that they are one of many. It's not anything that they should be ashamed of, or certainly not anything they should hide. They should open and honestly address it and get help.
Yeah, I think it's such a powerful message, and that's the thing that I've learned the most over the last 15 years being in as a mental health advocate, just sharing those stories. And even for me, hearing your story and hearing you talk openly about that journey, it really does help, because that is the key thing. Everyone goes through a different version, their own unique version of these of mental health related issues, some severe, some less severe, but it's part of the human experience. And it's crazy that we've been made to feel, I mean, less so now, but still there is a lot of that stigma that we're alone in that suffering. And I love the way that you're conveying this message that about the practicality of how do we actually find help? How do we get the help we need? What process? Because it's a minefield. It's there's no one size fits all, and there's a million different ways we can go about it. So it's sort of about finding, your own way forward, which I want to jump into with you in a second. But I think firstly, just with your career and the longevity you've had, I mean, it's insane that at 25, getting to that position, I mean, that's so incredibly young, and that you've had so much longevity. Would you say a big part of that has been because you had that passion and purpose that was so aligned with, I guess, the career you've gone into? It was so aligned with your passion and purpose, and you were doing it for those right reasons, which I think, again, is refreshing to hear in this day and age. But would you say that's part of where that longevity's come from?
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of it. And also, part of the irony of this is, my anxiety stems from severe insecurity as a child. I was adopted. There's a whole bunch of different issues that went into that, but I'm very, very insecure. I was really worried about what other people thought of me. I didn't understand my place in the world, and I felt like I had to work extra hard in order to achieve it. And the good news about that is two things. One, you know, failure was not an option in my mind. I had to prove myself on a day in and day out basis. So even in that first state Senate campaign, and I document this in the book, after my campaign plan had fallen completely apart, I didn't give up. And that relentlessness to just keep working and never accept the fact that it was over, really helped me. And that was driven by my insecurity. And then the second part of it that I think is really helpful to me as a public official is what I said earlier. I really care about what other people think. I want to know if someone, if I'm doing a town hall meeting and I've got 100 people there and maybe 99 of them are all going, yeah. And I look over and there's one person looking at me like I'm an idiot. I got to address that. Okay. I've got to figure out, okay, what am I doing wrong? What I'm saying, what's good? And the thing is, those are really positive traits, I think, in life in general. But the problem is you also have to have those within a healthy mental state, because those positive traits can cross over the line to creating massive anxiety. If you have that level of insecurity, it's just going to be really difficult, if you push yourself constantly to be in the right mental space.
If you're looking to make a change, to lose weight, to get toned, to gain self-confidence, all in just 24 minutes a day, then go no further. You can check out the Move Your Mind community by going to nickbrax.start.page. I'm super interested in what you were talking about there with insecurity, and totally relate. It's been the biggest driving force for me in my career, and everything's been sort of approached with that mindset of failure is not an option. I've had to succeed. And I think also having a successful father drove that even more so. So I find it interesting. I mean, do you see that as a positive or negative? Because I think a lot of us are driven to succeed through, potentially, I don't know if the word is negative, but through trying to, overcompensate. But then it actually leads, often to the path that we want to go on. So I just find that fascinating. I'm interested in your view on that.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I used to joke before I had all these mental health problems that I believe in the power of negative thinking. And what I meant by that was, if you anticipate what might get in the way of your goals, then you're going to overcome them. You're going to focus on it. You have to be clear-eyed about what's in front of you. And really the conclusion that I reached after 3.5 years of psychotherapy and talking through this was, it is a complete positive, but you have to look at it the right way, and you have to understand what that drive means. And what I was missing, I was driven to do this because I felt like I had to prove myself. All right. And there's nothing wrong with being ambitious and driven. But when you get to that point where you think it's your meaning in life, you're really you're setting yourself up for failure. And this was the big concept that I did not understand, and no one ever explained to me until about the 10th psychiatrist that I found. He was a psychologist, but therapist, if you will, who actually helped me. And that was the concept of a healthy narcissism and the notion of your own self-worth. The first thing the psychologist said to me when I met with him the first time in the office, after having read through my questionnaire, was he said, "You don't think you have the right to exist." And when he said that to me, I thought, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I don't know what that means, and I have no idea how it's going to help me. But it was actually the key. Because if you don't, as a child, you're supposed to develop this baseline sense of your own self-worth. And that self-worth is not connected to how good you are at anything or what you've achieved or haven't achieved. You have it because you're human. All right. And if you don't believe that, then you think if you fail, if you screw something up, it really is kind of an existential threat. Because if you're not proving yourself to people every second of every day, it's not just that you had a bad day or you think you have no worth as a human being. And that stability has to come from your upbringing. And the other big point that I make, there's a lot of focus in mental health on what I would call extreme trauma. So, children who have been abused, they grew up with an alcoholic father, or abandoned, or any number of different really traumatic things. And those are huge problems. that need to be dealt with. And there are mental health ways to deal with that. But trauma can be a lot simpler than that. In my case, I was adopted. My mother had a bit of a depression problem. My father had a bit of an anxiety problem. I had an older brother. I had a somewhat unstable childhood, and I never got that sort of sense of inherent self-worth. And you have to work back to get that. Now, if you get that, and this was the other thing that held me up in treatment is I sort of got that after about, 2 years, whatever it was. But I was thinking, wait a second, this is who I am. I'm driven, I'm ambitious. And aside from, all the drugs I'm taking and the fact that I'm freaked out all the time, it's kind of worked out pretty well for me. I'm successful. I've got a good marriage, I got a good family and everything. So if you take this away from me, who am I? But the answer to that question is you're a better person. I haven't lost that drive. Okay. You can talk to anyone I work with back here. As the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, we got a hell of a lot done, and I had to work my way through, around, over, and with a whole lot of people to get it done. I never lost that drive and that ambition. But the sentence that I really like that occurred to me is I do it all the same, but without the anger and self-flagellation. And that can be done. Okay. You don't have to beat yourself up constantly to motivate yourself. But that's what, the therapy and the discussion taught me. So I think it's a huge positive if you understand how to manage it within a healthy mental space.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and that I think that is what a lot of people think if you're going to take medication, work on these problems, try and resolve these traumas or whatever it is. There can be a fear that might take away that drive, that might take away whatever this magic ingredient is, this thing inside me that makes me and makes me want to do these different things. But as you're saying there, if anything, it's actually going to make you more you. So you're just going to have more stability to do all of the things you want to do, and most likely get better results. I mean, have you felt that it's, if anything, improved your ability to perform in what you're doing?
Absolutely. I mean, it's made it so much better. It's improved my relationships to begin with. I was always kind of an introverted person, and I'm in an odd profession to be introverted. Now, over the years, it's like, if this, to me, if this is what I have to do, I will be extroverted. Okay. I will figure out how to make it work. But once I developed a better understanding of how my mind worked, it also gave me a greater appreciation for the people around me. And that's the other big key message that I have here. And you alluded to earlier the fact that the stigma around mental health is lessening. And you said, but not entirely. And you're absolutely right. It is lessening. It's still there. It's still a problem. But the other piece that I see as we've become more open in talking about mental health, there's also such a thing as an unhealthy narcissism. Okay. Mental health to truly work can't just be about you. It also helps to understand that the people you're dealing with in life, they've got stuff going on too. And what it really opened my eyes to, you encounter people you get into a conflict with, and they seem just sort of irrationally angry. I deal with people sometimes who are rationally angry. They're upset about what happened and all that. But when it goes to like an irrational level, your initial instinct is, that guy's just a jerk. Okay. Now I stop and go, hey, what's going on with that person? What unresolved issues, what challenges are they facing? And it really develops that empathy so you can better understand people. And if you're trying to get something done, whether you're trying to get a business deal done, I know you've started up some businesses, you're trying to get customers, you're working with other people, you're going to need other people to be successful in just about anything that you're going to do. And if you have that better understanding of where those other people are coming from, you can work better with them and you can accomplish more by figuring out how to, I don't want to say how to get them to do what you want, but basically how to persuade them of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So yes, I think it can make you much more successful in whatever you're doing in life.
On every level, exactly. And that's the thing, because it can make our experience better. It can make us connect more. Like you're saying there, we often might feel threatened or frustrated or anger towards someone who is having an opposing view or acting in a way that we might not agree with. But if you can step out and remove your emotion, exactly like you're saying there, you can almost have empathy for them and think, hang on, we all generally want the same thing. what's happened here? Why are they feeling this way? What have they gone through? And as you're saying as well, I think that's such an important message for anyone listening. I mean, a lot of our listeners are wanting to venture into doing their own business, getting into taking the plunge on whatever career endeavor, and realizing that no one does it alone. And I love hearing from, people like yourself, these messages that it always comes down to the people that we have around us, and we all need support in different ways, at work, outside of work. It all comes down to having the right people around us. So yeah, I think it's a really, really important message for anyone listening.
Yeah, and that's frankly one of the most positive aspects of my experience was, as I say in the book, I mean, one of my great fears when the anxiety hit and everything is like, okay, I'm not going to be able to get done what I need to get done. And the idea was always in my head. And if I can't, all the people around me are going to abandon me. Basically, I was just sort of hardwired to think that, if I'm not delivering, then why is this person, why are they even around? And what I learned is people don't really think like that. People are a lot kinder and more helpful than you might initially think. And throughout my whole process, I mean, certainly my family, my friends, my staff, I mean, the support that I received when I was, not even close to 100%, it was, well, frankly, it's overwhelming. I mean, even as I think about it now, I get emotional just thinking about all the people who were there for me when I really needed them. That type of, connection, it's right there if you accept the reality that people are willing to offer it.
Yeah, that was the next thing I was going to ask you. How was that received through the work that you're doing, through the people around you? How was the support? Were they surprised that you were going through this when you first spoke about it? And how difficult was that for you to first, I guess, reach out and be open and ask for that help?
Yeah, it was really hard because, and I know it's ironic again in the profession that I'm in, I hate asking other people for things. I just, yeah, of course I got to raise money. Ultimately, I got to ask people to vote for me. But by and large, if there's a way I can do something myself, that's the way I prefer to do it. And I had to. I mean, literally, I'd be in my office and I didn't have the physical strength to walk down to the cafeteria and get a sandwich. Okay.
Wow.
So somebody was going to have to do that for me. And they did. And also in my office, and it's also a balance, at different times I've helped other people. I mean, that's the way the world works. And I think we need to better understand that everyone is going to struggle from time to time. The way we get through it is we have a support system. So that it was difficult, but it also opened my eyes again to better understanding, humanity from a more positive light. And to not be in that constant state of fear that, everyone's going to leave me unless I'm doing something incredible for them, which again was a childhood thing. But yeah, it really it has improved and strengthened my relationships on a whole series of levels.
Yeah, and it really is. It's all the stories in our head, and on both levels, how we perceive people, how we perceive ourselves. I mean, I always find it refreshing, and I love that you're saying you're an introvert, and hearing you talk now, looking at what you do, it's hard to believe that, but I think that is another important message for people, because I'm incredibly shy, introverted, and when I first got into public speaking, I was terrified. But you build that skill, and and a lot of actors are really shy. So people, again, it's that thing in our mind of we look outside, and I think more so than ever now in this social media driven world where it's all about comparison, looking at highlight reels, and we can very easily just sit there and think, oh, if only I had what that person had, and I could never do that, and it's almost like looking at them like they're not human, where we're not seeing what this person's actually had to go through behind the scenes to get to where they are.
Just two quick stories on that. Now, as a parent of two children, I would walk around the house. You see all the pictures of the kids and everything. As I say, nobody ever takes a picture when your kid is up for the third straight night throwing up. You haven't slept in 3 days. Your wife and you are screaming at each other about who's helping out more or less. No one ever takes that picture or posts that Instagram. Okay. So, the saying that pictures don't lie, pictures lie all the time. Okay. Because they are They are a snapshot of a moment in time. All right.
Yeah.
So you have to expand that. And then, you're talking about the public speaking thing really resonates with me because so I'm like shy, paranoid, but I'm running for the state Senate, going knocking on doors and all that. But when I first started speaking, I was on the debate team at Fordham University, where I went to undergrad, and that was helpful to me. But debate, for the most part, at Fordham, we debated with the Ivy League and all the other folks up there. But this first 6 rounds of debate were just 4 people and a judge, me, my partner, and the other 2 teams, and I could get comfortable in that environment. All right. So I overcame my fears, but I got good enough that my senior year, I actually made the final round at New York University. And in the final round, it's the 2 of you, the other team, and 250 people from all of these elite universities. Bottom line, I completely choked. I mean, I was just it was embarrassing. As a really good friend of mine said to me afterwards, he says, "Yeah, Adam, but the only thing you didn't do was drool on yourself," which I think was a pretty good summary. All right, because I was terrified, and I say all of this because, not bragging, but objectively, I'm a very good public speaker now. I just spent last week debating all manner of different things on the defense bill on the floor of the House, and I'm really good at it. But if you'd gone back and played that video from when I was 21 years old, standing up on the stage in New York University, you would have gone, well, no one's ever going to hear from that guy again. All right. So understand that when you're dealing with your own struggles in life. We are a continuum. All right. It's not like, all right, you're always great, you're always awful. No, it's a process that we all go through. And you're right, social media is just brutal on that front. You look at everybody else and you assume that what's wrong with me? I mean, their lives are perfect, and do not believe that. Understand the limitations of that information.
Yeah, it is just because it's just too easy to pick it all apart and find those negatives when, yeah, it's not real. But I love that story. Thank you for sharing those. And I think it's just, again, it's such an important message because people need, we want a quick fix a lot of the time now. And as you're saying there, similar to me, to get past that fear of public speaking, I remember being in university, the first talks I did, I would blank out. I was mumbling, vomiting before I'd do it in front of 5 people. And 3 years later, I was on a stage in front of 1,000 people comfortably doing it. But it was all, it's immersion therapy. I think it's one of the, most impactful ways to improve and get over any of these fears by just throwing yourself in there and doing it. There's not many more powerful ways to, to get over something.
Yeah, and that's the other big thing in mental health is I think the way children are raised, certainly in the U.S. now, I think Australia is probably similar. It's by and large a lot more comfortable environment than people grew up in a long time ago, and people are not comfortable with being uncomfortable. I struggle with this with my own children. I mean, they're good, smart, capable, and everything, but they're not used to being uncomfortable. So they think if they're feeling uncomfortable, that's something that they have to get rid of that. They have to not experience that. When in fact, the exact opposite is true. If you're really going to, fulfill yourself as a human, and I'm not even talking about professional accomplishment, I'm just talking about the emotions and the way you're supposed to feel as a human being. Huge chunk of that is figuring out how to deal with feeling uncomfortable. It makes you more alive and also makes you better prepared to deal with whatever life is going to throw at you down the road. It's okay. And believe me, I'm an insecure person. I remember what that felt like. I'm not dismissing it. It's terrible. Okay. In the moment, it's just like, but you learn from it and you become a better person for both yourself and for the people around you.
And it's just practice. I mean, and it doesn't, it doesn't feel amazing in the moment, but I look at it like, going to the gym. It's one of my favorite things to do. And, you have to drag yourself out of bed. It doesn't feel great, when you're getting started, but then you're on a high afterwards. You feel amazing for the rest of the day. And it's the same thing, you do something uncomfortable. It doesn't feel great at the time, but then you get the longevity that comes from that is huge. And it gets you out of your head, and it takes practice to do it, but yeah, it does bring so many positives. So it's just getting used to, and I think reframing how we look at it, looking at it like it's instead of being afraid of failing at something or making a fool of yourself, look at, you know what, if this goes belly up, I'm going to learn probably more than even if it goes perfectly well. So it's just how we're viewing,
Yeah.
how we
Well,
approach a lot of
also
things.
the instinct, and I've always been, even in my insecure days, a pretty driven, type A type of person. But also, if I sit down on the couch and I'm watching a football game, and you ask me in that moment, and America, you can watch football on Sunday now, I think for like, 11, 12 hours. If you ask me in that moment, what do you want to do? What I want to do instinctively is stay on this couch watching that football game. Okay.
Yep.
But I know if I do that, I'm not going to feel good tomorrow. So you have to physically force yourself to get up. And whether it's, and I love exercising too and have the same approach to it, or go see a friend or do, or mow the lawn or do something. Your initial instinct, I think a lot of people assume, well, my instinct, I just don't really want to get up. I'm just different than other people. No, that's pretty much everybody. Okay.
Yeah.
You get into that. Or if you're on your phone, okay, and I'll do this all the time. I'll get on my computer because I have to check an email. So I'll check a couple emails and I'm like, well, let me check that site. Let me check this site. And then I'm just sitting there because I'm sitting there. All right. So you do have to sort of work your way through that. But more than anything, I think mental health, we haven't paid enough attention to mental health. And I always draw this analogy, like growing up, you get a physical. All right. If your knee hurts, you go and have someone look at it. But we're not trained in the same way to think about how to process the stress in our life, the ups and downs. And your mind is just like, the muscles in your body. It has to be exercised and it has to be trained in order to deal with what is coming at it. And I think there's that big gap out there in telling people, yeah, you need to think about your mental health. Because that was my thing. When this hit me, I was like, mental health, I don't think about that. I have this analogy I draw that it's like my thinking about mental health was there was this line, either you're normal or you're crazy. And I determined I was normal, so I didn't have to worry about mental health. All right. And that's not the way it works. It's just like with your body. You have to do things in order to make it feel better. You have to do things in order to make sure your mind feels better. And I think we're beginning to start to educate people about that. And that's a very positive thing.
Are you interested in joining a community of like-minded people who are on the same journey as you are? Even though you're the one that needs to do the work, you don't have to go it alone. You can find all of the information at nickbrax.start.page. It's incredibly positive, and so I totally agree with everything you're saying there. And I think because it's intangible, we need to make it more tangible for people to understand, okay, these are some things you can actually do. And it's not just about doing it when you're feeling bad, and it's not just about doing it to sort of get past, that dark period. It's about making it part of your life, and this is something that we do forever, the same way, exactly like you're saying. We don't just exercise to, lose some weight and then stop and expect that we're going to be good forever. It's about these are daily lifestyle choices that are going to improve all facets of our life. And I think what I wanted to ask you were talking about earlier, how would you say people can navigate the process of, if someone out there is going through a similar journey, where do they begin? How can they navigate that process? Where can they look? And, I know you talk about in your book the healthcare system in the US. I mean,
Yeah.
I live in New York now. I'm from Australia, and I've seen how many difficulties there are with that healthcare system. How can people navigate that? Because it's really difficult.
Yeah, there's two big pieces to that, and I'll get to the second one, which you mentioned, which is how do you access the system in a moment. But initially, I think it's good to sort of frame what mental health is, just as a baseline, and know what you're dealing with. And one is that healthy narcissism, that sense of self-worth. Second is you have to understand how the stresses and strains and traumas in your life work. Either at any point in your entire history, from your childhood up to this present moment, there are things that have happened in your life that probably troubled you more than you realized. Something that made you angry, something that you did that you feel guilty about, some trauma that you experienced that you didn't properly process. And you have to be honest about that. I use one comparison is like, let's say you're in a job that you're pretending like you like because you know you need the money and you have to do it, but you really hate it. You're not being honest about it. Or you're in a relationship that's similar like that. Or for me, it was a lot of stuff that happened with my childhood. I had a lot of bad feelings about my family growing up, how it sort of fell apart, didn't work out, what I did or didn't do about it. And I'd sort of blown past that. And I really needed to think about that. So number two is you have to be honest about your history and understand that you can't correct it. That was my big problem.
Mm.
I would think back on all the mistakes I made and said, well, I got to fix that. Some of the stuff you can't fix. You just got to acknowledge it. And there's a lot of great treatments out there now, particularly for trauma, that help you go back and experience that trauma and really process it. There's actually some medications. There's a thing called EMDR that's really helpful in processing that trauma, and that can relieve a tremendous amount of anxiety. And then the third point is cognitive behavioral therapy. Teaching your mind how to process stress can really be helpful. The thoughts that come into your head, a lot of times they're irrational and you don't have to believe them. You know, you'll see the look on someone's face, like your boss gives you an odd look coming into work in the morning. You spend the whole day convinced that you're going to get fired or that, you know, your partner is going to leave you or whatever. It really helps to train your mind to better process that stuff. And that's what I got out of meditation. Was I don't do the deep meditation where I leave all thoughts behind for 20 minutes. I could never achieve that. I beat myself up for a long time trying to figure out how to do that, but I couldn't. But what meditation can really train you to do is to not chase thoughts. I will, while I'm walking or brushing my teeth or whatever, I'll go like 2 minutes and just go, I'm not going to react to anything. I'm just going to notice it. The thought will occur to me. I'll hear a sound, whatever. So you can calm yourself down on that. The other piece that you mentioned, all I can tell you, accessing our healthcare system is not going to be easy. All right. I'm a supporter of a universal access to healthcare system. I think the Affordable Care Act that we passed and I voted for here 12 years ago has helped. It's given people more access. But if you don't have insurance, it's going to be a struggle. Even if you do have insurance, I had insurance, and about half of the providers that I sought out, most of the providers I sought out were on the physical side, but I did go to about a dozen psychiatrists, psychologists, didn't take insurance. So can you afford it? And can you find that person? You have to accept that you're going to, in our country, you are going to have to work and be assertive to get access to the care. And that's brutal and it's terrible. If you're in pain and you have mental health problems, thinking clearly, obviously, if you're thinking clearly, you wouldn't be seeking help. All right. It's difficult, but get people to help you because you will have to work to be able to find the care that you need, unfortunately.
I think, well, thank you for sharing all of that. And I love how practical you are in explaining these points of how people can, work on these different areas. And I guess it is an unfortunate thing, but a really important message, what you're saying there, for people to understand it's not going to be easy to get the help. You're going to have to really put in that effort, search, find the right things. And even not in the US, in Australia, we have, we get more support with it, but it's still not great. We'll get rebates on the first 6 sessions from a psychologist, but to see a psychiatrist, where often there's a 12 to 18 month wait, and it's hard to navigate, where to begin. So I think this is still a universal message. Yes, the healthcare system in the US could be dramatically improved, but I think in terms of getting the right help, it is going to just take that work. It's like starting a business almost. It's like, where do I begin? I've just got to, through trial and error, see a different therapist. Does this work for me? Maybe doing some, daily things like exercise, meditation, etc. are going to work. It's just, you've really got to throw yourself into it and look at it as an investment in yourself, because if you're looking for that quick fix, it's not going to happen. It's not going to work.
That's actually much better put than I did. And I do make this point in my book. I talk about our healthcare system, and I do point out that people who point to Canada, Great Britain, Europe, that's not a cure-all, okay?
No.
Because there is simply more demand for healthcare than there is money to pay for it. And you've got to figure out how to, every healthcare system in the world rations it one way or the other, because it's just, you can't pay for absolutely everything. So there's no magical solution. I think what you just said there is really on point and very helpful.
Yeah, no, thank you. I totally agree. are you able to tell us a bit more about your book and how was
Yeah.
the process putting that together?
Sure. Yeah. So like I said, I had this problem, 2013, the anxiety hit, 2014, the chronic pain hit. And I start my book in 2016 when I was at the lowest point, which was after my third hip surgery. I was on like 5 or 6 different medications, benzodiazepines, oxycodone, and I wasn't getting better. I wasn't getting over that hip surgery. And then, I go back to how I got there and how I got out of it. So when I got to mid 2019, I took my last little clonazepam pill that I'd carved up in April of 2019. So I was completely off of drugs. I had this therapist who I'd been seeing for about 3 years at that point. I found my muscle activation therapist who just totally saved my life physically in terms of getting my muscles working again. So I was getting better, and I thought I should tell this story, because I'm a very logical person, as you can tell, by the way. And I had kept detailed notes of this whole experience. I used to send my providers used to dread getting emails from me, because I would go, well, okay, I'm doing this and I'm getting this result, and you said this and I said that. Okay, so where are we going? So I thought, let's just tell the story. And as I was writing it during the pandemic, actually, I thought this is a story that can help people. So I put it together because I wanted what in the military refers to as an after action report. Basically, what happened? What can we learn from it? And then I thought it would be a good story to tell because of the number of people who are going through the same thing. I mean, if you're talking about chronic pain, anxiety, and depression, and I had depression at one point in my life, people are going through some combination of that in the millions in this country and in others as well. I thought I could be part of the conversation as to how we can help people better treat those. So that's why I told the story and why I laid out the way I did. I don't lay it out as, here's the magic solution. Everything's going to be fine. It's just, I hope as people read through it, they can go, okay, I recognize that, or I'm a little bit different this way, whatever. I hope it helps people in the process of solving the problems that they face.
Yeah, and I think that's the perfect message, because again, there's no one size fits all. Anyone saying that they've got the solution, or follow my 12-step program and I've got the solution to solve all problems, it's probably not the right answer. But sharing your story, sharing your experience, giving people actionable ideas, and I think that message, again, that logical message, is critical to actually ask questions. Hey, what about this? What about that? Hey, I'm struggling with this issue. I understand the information you're giving me, but I don't know what to do daily. I'm still having this experience. And we have to drill down like that, because otherwise it becomes too ambiguous and you can go around in circles. So it's, really, really important. What would you say to someone suffering? I mean, anxiety's probably been, for me, the biggest thing that I've had to deal with. What would you, and as you just alluded to before, around the world, it's a huge issue. What would you say to someone dealing with anxiety? What are some tools that have worked for you in that realm to deal with anxiety on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think the cognitive behavioral therapy part. Now, again, my problem was I didn't have that baseline sense of self-worth. So a lot of the
Yeah.
therapists that I went to were trying to put me into cognitive behavioral therapy, which I was too dismissive of too quickly. Because, one of the things, they would all say, what are you anxious about? And a lot of times when you have anxiety, an important thing to understand is you're not anxious about any specific thing. That's what's so vexing about it to people who have never experienced anxiety. That's stress. Okay. I can talk about, I'm in the middle of an election and oh my gosh, my opponent just put out this ad. I got to, do I respond to it? Do I not respond to it? I'm stressed. How do I deal with that? You can certainly process that stuff, and that is important. But anxiety itself just comes at you and doesn't necessarily have a specific cause. Okay. And if that's the case, you really need to get into your basic sense of self-worth, and you will need someone to help you understand that. But then if you have that, the cognitive behavioral therapy stuff really does help. And what it basically means is to think more logically, to understand the way your brain works, and that it can take you down dark roads. And the other big thing for me that helped was I learned that I don't have to solve every problem, because this was one of my things. And the way I always explain this as the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, a lot of people would ask me the question, what keeps you up at night? I guess in Reporter 101, that's the question you're supposed to ask. And I know what they're asking, but I always answer the question the same way now, and that is nothing. Nothing keeps me up at night because that doesn't help anything. Okay. All right. It's not like if I stay up for another 3 hours lying in bed worrying about it, I'm suddenly going to find the solution. But here's the thing. I used to believe that. I used to have this thing where if something was bothering me, I could feel it. And I'd be like, okay, what is it? Was it something someone said? And I had to deal with it. I had to deal with it and I had to resolve it before I could relax. Okay. I had to protect myself. You've got to get comfortable with the idea you're not going to solve everything. The problems are going to be there when you wake up in the morning, and you're going to be better rested and in a better position to deal with them. So it's really important to recognize that. You don't have to solve every problem. The second big piece is, and there's a lot, I'm not a huge fan of medication, all right? And let me just say up front, as I like to joke, I'm not going to go all Tom Cruise on you here. Medication works for some people. I understand that. We way overprescribe it. It's the easy button. It's the simple, quick fix. And I will take as an example the whole idea of the serotonin levels in your head. If you're depressed or anxious, they assume, well, your serotonin is out of balance. So we're going to give you this drug and it's going to make your serotonin get back to it. And what that tells people is there's nothing I can do about this. They treat it sort of like diabetes, which is if your insulin level, nothing you can do about that. It's not the same. Yes, your serotonin levels can affect that, but you can also train your brain, regardless of what their serotonin levels are, to better process that stuff. I think of it in the same way as physically training. You can train your body to have more endurance. Okay. If you don't have enough cardio, you can go run, bike, swim, and then you'll have more cardio. You can also train your brain to not chase after every thought, to not follow those emotions. And just being aware of that is incredibly helpful as a starting point. And then it is incredibly helpful to talk about this stuff. You got to be honest. And that's the hardest thing, I think, for a lot of people. You build up these images of who you are and what you've done and how it's been that isn't necessarily what actually happened. And some of that stuff can trigger anxiety. And then you just got to be honest. How do you really feel about the relationships you're in? How do you really feel about the things you've done or the things that other people have done to you? So be honest. But also, it does help to find a therapist. The final thing I'll say about a therapist is you got to find one that you mesh with. All right. Therapists are like everybody else. They're different. Some are good at their jobs. Some are not good at their jobs. All right. So you've got to find the right one. I did want to say the other reason that I wrote the book is I am a public official. I still have a hard time thinking of myself that way. And I think to have someone who is out in the public talking about this helps expand the idea that, hey, member of Congress, this isn't so odd and bizarre after all.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, please click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram at NickBrax. I really appreciate your ongoing support. Yeah, and that point I think is so important because there's not many politicians that are out there talking about this kind of stuff, and when you look at it, it's like, well, why? Other people are, and we're all human, We like to categorize things and look at people in different positions as, they're not allowed to show human traits. And I think that's what I learned growing up in a political family. It's almost like there's an expectation that you're not meant to show that. And I think that needs to be broken because it's not true. And in so many facets of life. So, I think that's, it's very brave of you to go and do it. And I think it's helping so many people. It's helped me even hearing that message.
Well, I think, part of the reason public officials, because we all have our brand, right? You got to stay on message. You got to have your, and I think that's part of the reason why a lot of politicians are reluctant to do it because they think of it as being off brand. And I think this is particularly important now in the social media world where you got 13-year-olds who are developing their brand, which, by the way, I still find insane. But you've got Instagram, you got Twitter. It's like, well, I want people to perceive me this way, and then I've got to once I've got that perception, I've got to keep it in. We humans are a lot more all over the place. Okay. And that's okay. In fact, that makes it better, I think, when you acknowledge all the different variations that are in any one human being. But as a politician, you're trained that way. So I think that's why most politicians are reluctant to do anything that could be perceived as off message. So I want to try to break that. Obviously, there are others. Senator Fetterman has been very public with his battles with depression. It is more part of the human experience than most people are aware.
Absolutely. No, I think that's really well put. And just as a quick summary, are you able to just, I mean, you've talked about it, you exercise, CBT, different things, but on a daily basis, what are the main things that help you now? Is it sleeping enough, exercise? What are the things for our listeners that, you could share on that level?
Well, first of all, the muscle activation therapy, which I
Yep.
didn't really touch on. Look, and I won't go into the long explanation here, but typically what physical therapists were telling me is, your muscles, you need to be stronger and more flexible. That's the basic thing, but it's missing a
Right.
crucial step. Muscle activation. If your body is messed up, and I had a knee surgery when I was a kid, my hips were impinged. I've never been terribly flexible. And your muscles will react to that and they will overcompensate. Some will shut down. You got to get those going again. The muscle activation techniques, folks, if you Google muscle activation techniques, there's a lot of different people who do a form of muscle activation. This is one particular school that got my muscles going again. And I still, every couple of months, I go see the guy. Now, when I first started seeing him, there are 43 distinct muscle patterns in your body. When I first started seeing him, I think like 40 of them were shut down in me. All right.
Oh my
Now, when I
God.
go see him, it's like, 2, 3, maybe 4 if I've had a bad couple of months. So that's number one.
Wow.
The other thing is I move constantly. I do about 20,000 steps a day. I walk. I still go to the gym, on a somewhat frequent basis. So I exercise a lot. The other big thing is when I go for a walk, I have artificial hips, so I can't run. I don't take my phone with me. Okay. It drives my staff crazy from time to time, but I'm just going to go think and relax. And the other big thing I do is it is helpful to take at least some portion of your day and say, I'm not going to react to what's going on around me. And it doesn't have to be long. Like I said, for me, it's usually just a couple of minutes and just say, I'm just going to notice things for a while. I'm not going to react. I'm not going to try to solve problems. And then find what brings you joy in life and do it. For me, it's exercise, sports, and humor. Okay. If something strikes me funny, it just makes me feel better. All right. And there are some people, my wife loves to garden and do the yard work. It just gives her a sense of completion. So she goes out there for an hour, whatever it is in life that brings you joy, find time to do that because that can give your mind some space as well. And that's sort of how I've lived my life. And it's worked out. I fly back and forth. I fly all over the world. Doesn't really bother me. I sleep wherever I have to sleep. I would say that's my superpower. Actually, I can sleep on an airplane, which is enormously helpful in my line of work. So, whatever works for you, really important to find those things that bring you joy and make you happy, at least a couple of times a day.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think super inspiring, overcoming that chronic pain and getting to the point you're at now. I think for everyone listening, everything in this really, it's, there's so many amazing points. So thank you again for sharing. Where can we send our listeners if they want to find your book or anything else? Where's best for them to go?
Yeah, the book is straightforward on Amazon.com. I do have it. I don't do social media. Well, sorry. In my professional life, my staff does my social media. I'm all over social media. I don't have anything to do with about 99% of it. I do have an Instagram and a Twitter site now that I've done personally that I don't update as often as I should. But the easiest way to find out more about me is to go to Adam Smith at mail.house.gov. That's my official website. And from that, everything else sort of flows out of there.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. We'll put that in the link. So please, anyone listening, go and check it out. And Adam, we finish with 5 closing questions. These can be just quick answers, but we finish every episode with these, so nothing too crazy. The first one being, what's the best childhood memory that comes to mind for you?
Oh gosh, best childhood memory. Yeah, I see you're going right at my weak point. My childhood was a little bit disrupted. I guess my best childhood memory is hanging out with my high school friends. My family was kind of messed up. I was blessed with some great friends. My best childhood memory is all the sort of the misadventures that my friends and I used to get into in high school.
What would you say is currently, I mean, we've talked a bit about this, but what do you think is currently the biggest burden on mental health in society?
I'm trying to figure out how to put this exactly. I think it's the just unrelenting pace of life between social media and the information age. Trying to find that space to not be constantly bombarded with information and people is increasingly difficult in the modern world. I think that's the greatest strain on mental health right now.
Yeah, great answer. It's a huge, huge issue. What is your personal definition of happiness?
Well, actually, it's a card my wife's grandmother sent me one time, which is figure out what you want in life, get it, and then enjoy it.
I love that. It's nice and simple and
Yes.
clear. That's great. What are you most afraid of?
I think it's still fairly true to say I'm most afraid of dying. Still haven't figured that one out yet, but is what it is.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and I share that with you. I mean, I think some people seem to be able to come to peace with it. If I'm alone and I think about it properly, I will start yelling. Like I'm still terrified. It's
Yeah.
terrifying. So a pretty common one there, but yeah, it's a big fear. Final one on a more positive note. What are you most proud of?
Um, I guess what I'm most proud of is the relationships that I have built in my life. I used to say, once I got married and had kids and life was really stressful in the early 2000s, right after my kids were born, that my motto was simple. Good father, good husband, good congressman. Those are my jobs. Those are my responsibilities. I want to make sure that the people I interact with feel better about their life because of that experience. And, I've got a great marriage, got a good relationship with my children. And, as far as I know, the people who have worked with me over the years, we've had a great team. A lot of people out there in the world now that I've worked with in one capacity or another. I think I'm most proud of the relationships I've had and how I've treated other people.
Well, great way to end, and I think it's the most important thing, the relationships around us, and that's really a reflection of who we are and our character. So, Adam, thank you again for all the work you're doing. Thank you for coming on here. Really admire what you're doing, and yeah, appreciate you coming on here.
Well, thank you very, very much for the chance.
Thank you, Congressman Adam Smith, for joining me today and offering your insights. And thank you for listening. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode and any suggestions for topics you'd like to hear about. Feel free to leave a comment or just send a DM. Your feedback's always appreciated. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram. It really makes a difference. Thank you so much.